Welcome to the Innovation World Young Collaborators podcast series. My name is Aaron Bothra. I'm 16 years old and I live in Aurora, Illinois, in the United States of America. On this episode, we're joined by Max Kopp, a 17-year-old innovator working at the intersection of health and technology. He's the founder of VitaSensor, a startup pioneering non-invasive glucose monitoring technology, and the founder of the Kopp Foundation for Diabetes, a youth-led initiative supporting leadership and awareness in the type 1 diabetes space. Max, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
That's great. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Just been over the weekend trying to, school just started, so getting that already.
That's great. And yeah, I'm excited to get into it. Your work is very exciting, so I'm sure everyone listening is excited to hear about it. So to start off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're currently working on at VitaSensor and the Kopp Foundation?
Oh yeah. Hello everyone. I'm Max Kopp. I'm a 17-year-old out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Um, And what I'm working on currently with VitaSensor is trying to make a basically non-invasive continuous glucose monitors. This would be different than your Eversense 360s or things like that, as those still use little needles to penetrate the skin and sort of get that data. As in VitaSensor, we currently have, going through the prototypes, we have one, how it works is it basically uses light or photoplethysmography. And what this means is glucose is naturally Charlie atomic, or more like so what it means is it's optically active. So as light hits these glucose molecules, the angle of the light is unchanged. And um, based off this polarized light's angular change, it's like proportional to the glucose. So then you can determine the glucose concentration, as well as the blood sugar for people with diabetes or anyone that sort of wants to monitor their health and things like that. So that's currently what's sort of going on with VitaSensor. We have a prototype V2 out right now, which we're getting engineered, which is just one that's a standalone device, and we're currently working on making it wearable using germanium cyanide and nanomaterials in the future. As for the Kopp Foundation, we're sort of getting things on the road right now. We have five board members currently, and we're recruiting two more, and we're in the process of, going through the legal work of things like that. And really, what it's about is bringing a youth voice to people with diabetes. Parents that need help raising their children that have it, that don't personally experience that, as well as just really raising awareness, I think, through a youth voice. Using things like social media, as well as our college captains program, which we go to colleges and then they start their own sort of sectors at their own colleges, which we recruited over five colleges so far. So that's kind of where both of my entities are currently at.
I love that. I love how you have a novel invention and like technological approach, but also the Kopp Foundation and kind of a community-based youth-led approach. So I'm curious, what first got you interested in type 1 diabetes research and technology? Was it a personal experience that you had or something that you noticed in the world around you?
I think it was more so a combination of both, really. My father's side of the family deals with type 1 diabetes a lot. I personally was thankful to not be affected by it, but my grandfather had died to diabetes complications, as well as when I was actually, I guess, the story of VitaSensor a little bit. When I was I'm in high school, and I wanted to see what science fair was all about. And I sort of try to get into diabetes off my own personal problems and my family. And I just sort of like got involved with the space. And I just feel like it is such a huge problem and it's a life-changing diagnosis that I don't think you're seeing the same philanthropic scale as some other challenges out there.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. My grandfather, also on my dad's side, passed away due to diabetes one. So I'm really glad that you're trying to tackle this issue. And I think that's amazing. So for those that are unfamiliar, I know you touched on this a little bit before, but for those that are unfamiliar with how glucose is usually tracked, what makes it such a challenge and how does that affect day-to-day life for someone living with type 1 diabetes?
Yeah, yeah. So like today, most people would use like finger sticks, or minimally invasive continuous glucose monitors. For these finger sticks, the issues is not only you have to constantly do it daily, they also give a risk of infection as well as they draw blood from the skin, which can be uneasy for some people. For the sensors themselves, they need replacement, calibration and insurance approvals, as well as they're highly expensive and need to be changed out bi-weekly, leading up to 200 to 300 per device, which is uh, way too expensive for some people out there, especially the elderly and things like that. As well as, glucose changes with meals, activity, stress, and sleep. So people are making dozens of small decisions every day. The burden is real, and the goal is accurate data with, less friction.
I love that. I love that how you've identified this problem and then figured out a way to solve it. So, I know you've also touched on this again, but if you could restate for us, what is VitaSensor and what does it aim to do differently compared to what's on the market? Using germanium selenide, nanomaterials, and AI in the design, how does it work and how does it collect data?
Yeah, I guess a quick recap of what it was, and then go more into basically the nitty-gritty of VitaSensor. So VitaSensor is a non-invasive wearable glucose monitor that aims to sort of sense glucose signals through the skin using advanced optoelectronics and signal processing, like the photoplethysmography I mentioned prior. Our approach uses the GSC or germanium selenide, like you mentioned, to improve sensitivity to very subtle optical and electrical changes correlated with the glucose dynamics, as well as that what even just using a native material allows us to do, not specifically GSC, besides, it's wide spectral range coverage, low power consumption, all the other benefits of using that specific one has, it makes the sensor itself malleable and wearable. As is the nanomaterial, it becomes bendable, which in theory, as we're putting to work now, you can put into sort of an armband or another form factor like that, so it can actually become a wearable continuous glucose monitors. So basically, we pair that hardware with a photosysmography and an AI model that learns an individual's like signal profile as you put in this data beforehand in our app over time. So, and then this device collects this data and filters the noise out and uses a calibration pipeline to sort of estimate glucose trends for the future, as well as, we're designing for comfort, accuracy, and, the continuous use part, which is very important to us.
Well, that's an amazing invention and a very novel approach. So, what stage of the design process is VitaSensor in now? And how are you preparing for clinical trials? And what does that process look like so far for you?
Yeah, so far VitaSensor, we're as, things are starting to get more busy. We do have a prototype V2, as I mentioned, which is sort of a handheld device, not yet wearable just yet, but portable. We have lab prototypes for this wearable device and benchtop validation on tissue mimicking phantoms, and healthy volunteer signal tests so far, especially in the Philadelphia area where we've run some pilot trials. We're sort of trying to finalize the next like hardware revision, tightening the optical stack and like hardening the firmware, as well as really jumping on, as I mentioned, the app. I have to get some software engineers on that, but that really shouldn't be that big of a problem, as every single glucose sensor on the market currently has one. So like on the clinical path, we are assembling our protocol for an easy feasibility study actually with the University of Florida and the villages, which is great for us, as they're sort of a microcosm in the United States with the people they have down there in that community, as well as it appeals to us to partner with them in the villages as a major issue with the current glucose sensors is that their adhesives could possibly tear off the skin of elderly people. That's obviously something we cannot have. And through this, we can see not only feedback but also test results as real clinical data from those testing subjects down there and those elderly people we can connect with.
Well, yeah, that's amazing. I'm sure that VitaSensor will do great in that. And as you continue to build prototypes, I'm sure it'll be amazing. So obviously this is a very technical and very big problem to tackle at once. So I'm sure many of us are curious, when you were just getting started, what did those early designs and tests look like? And what helped you push through the challenges of building an invention at such a young age?
Yeah. My earliest sort of designs and rigs look like, it was for science fair. So it's, all laid out on my desk, and it was kind of sort of all over the place. But it's sort of just, to validate that technology. I was getting like breadboards from like Alibaba and working through things I can get at my like local spaces. And and like, 3D printing and things like that. Yeah, some duct tape here and there. I tested the little variables here and there and then like sort of just piling on. And then eventually, it sort of blossomed into something that I would say is VitaSensor. What really got me through it, is my mom, I would say. She obviously, I would not be able to fund all this myself. As what kept me going was really submitting these two sort of challenges and things and seeing what I actually believed in being validated by others, I think has really kept me going.
Mhm. That's a great spirit, and I'm sure a lot of young innovators can continue to use that are listening to apply to their own projects, and I think that's really great. So along the way, like all inventors, there's obviously road bumps that you encounter, challenges, especially doing this at such a young age. So can you share an example or two of problems that you've had when building VitaSensor, whether they be technical, logistical, or even just time related?
Yeah, one technical challenge was, I guess, this sort of specific one was separating glucose signals from motion artifacts, as there's a lot of stuff in our skin that isn't just glucose. So, we brought in some telemetry, and as well as we added polarization control and like in the multi-wavelength channels. Then the training model to weigh the channels, that's sort of that AI piece to sort of make sure that what the signals we're receiving are sort of what we should be receiving. So to kind of stay stable under movement. A logistical challenge we kind of came in encounter with was sourcing consistent nanomaterial films, especially for GSE, as it is a fine and sort of not very popular material currently right now, so there isn't a lot of source for it. So we had to build a repeatable like sort of deposition process and a simple QA protocol so data would be comparable across the different builds. As I was creating them, early stages, just in my loft.
Well, yeah, these sound like very technical challenges, but I'm glad that you were able to solve them and continue being persistent. And while you were working through all of these challenges, and obviously you're a high school student as well, do you have any issues with time management, or how would you go about kind of creating your schedule to make sure that you're giving enough attention to your schoolwork along with all of these other things that you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great, time management is a huge part of it, really. I really just sort of sectioned off my time into specific areas or like 1 to 2 hour periods to focus on this specifically, so I wouldn't have this on my mind while doing schoolwork or things like that. As you know, as an entrepreneur, you always want to be pushing forward, but I really had to section it off in sort of two separate worlds. I think what's worked best for me, as I knew when to do VitaSensor and when school took priority.
Another great mindset, and it's led you to a lot of success in both areas. So, you've already filed patents for your work, which is a huge milestone. So, congratulations. What was the process like, and what does it mean for you to have intellectual property around what you've built?
Yes, what was the process was like, it was very scary for me as, you just kind of see it as like, oh, a lawyer would do that or something along those lines. But when you really get into it, it's really not that terrible. It was something that actually really helped me in this process was doing those science fairs, as I really knew how to sort of lay out what I was making and how to describe it for these sort of patent formats. As it sort of brought me to a state where I could easily, the 5 minute speech, I just condensed that into 200 words, and boom, I had my description for my product. Um, and so, what does it mean to have that sort of intellectual property? I think it's very rewarding. You get that mail back, and you take it home after getting home from school, and you just see like it actually is valid. It gives you that validation that this is something that not only is you just dreamed of, but something that's a possibility.
Yeah, it definitely gives you that validation, and yeah, and it helps protect your invention from competitors and keeps you, on the top of the market. So, I'm imagining that with all of this work that you've done, you've had a few mentors or key partnerships along the way. Who or what has been most helpful in your process, and has supported you the most in the growth of VitaSensor?
Yeah, I'm grateful for all the advisors across, material science or biomedical engineering, clinical practice. A lot of them has been actually making connections through, I guess not to harp on a more science fair, as I would get in front of these judges and they just want to know more. And so, I think the community of just science research is a great one. They're not all focused on themselves, they're focused on just the advancement of humans as a whole. So they would give me like resources to reach out to other mentors, things like that. Professors or colleges to sort of so I could use their labs, which is great. I don't have the resources to purchase the hundreds of thousands of dollars of machinery those colleges have access to. So that was a huge thing for me. As well as just people that I could get a quick Zoom call on for 30 minutes to look over study designs or like regulatory cadence and product over like thinking, as well as not only at those next levels, but I'd say just peers in general. A 5 minute talk with your classmate or something like that that is also in the space is also just a huge breath of fresh air, as well as giving a new sort of view on what you're working on, which I think has always been great.
Yeah, this network that you formed from these science competitions and how you kind of expanded and leveraged that, I think is absolutely amazing. And I think for a lot of people listening, that are young innovators, it would be a great route for them to go down to, as obviously high school students don't have access to a large amount of resource and capital. I think it's definitely great to work with others and build out through the community. So that's a lot. We've talked a lot about VitaSensor, but now let's talk about the Kopp Foundation and the other side of your work. Could you tell us a little bit more about what led you to create the Kopp Foundation for Diabetes and how does it connect with the work that you're doing on the technology side?
Yeah. Good question. I basically started the Kopp Foundation backpacking off the experience I had through VitaSensor, as you know, it came first. And I just sort of was in the space, as I just mentioned before, and I felt like that the technology alone is not enough. People not only need this technology, they need education, access, and a community that listens to the youth. The foundation I like to see as sort of the bridge between innovation and impact. You know, VitaSensor prototype solutions and the foundation sort of scales the awareness and leadership and access to those solutions to sort of reach those people faster. And I think what really made the foundation for me is when I sort of got off the ground and seeing how many resources there are out there for nonprofits. It's really in reach, especially for youth, like me and you and everyone else out there. You know, I would hop on TechSoup and just see, you know, all these like Zoom premium memberships for 90% off, or like, you know, Slack that's just entirely free. So the resources are out there as well. And then, you know, people, just posting things on LinkedIn and things like that has really gotten people to sort of apply for these board roles as well as other roles. And it's just, you know, everyone just sort of wants to help, which has been great.
Mhm. That is amazing. And I think definitely it's a bridge between the technology that you have and the education, the access, and incorporating youth voices. I think that's a very powerful part, and it definitely adds to the work you're doing on both sides. So, at the Koff Foundation, what kind of programs are you running right now? Who is it targeted for, and what kind of impact are you hoping to create?
Yeah. Great question. So far, you know, I mentioned the college captain program, which is where we interview people colleges, sort of like seniors or juniors at colleges to sort of start their own Kopp Foundation sectors. And so far, that's been going great. We've been getting colleges like UCLA, UCSD a lot, interestingly enough, from the West Coast, which has been great to see. And then not only is Kopp Foundation a thing in the Philly area, but also we're going, you know, nationwide. Um, as well from college, you know, we also just have, web seminars in areas as well as online and in person to sort of, you know, just sort of get with trusted community partners as well as just, you know, put the word out there about the Kopp Foundation, as well as I think a very unique thing is we have an innovation hub that sort of supports students like me to sort of connect with those mentors that could be like people on our board that have experience, you know, in spaces that they would seek maybe a internship in or some other things like that. As well as, you know, I think our biggest program is the Youth Ambassador program, which works as it's like a sort of an umbrella term with the college captain program, as it's not only just the colleges, but as well as works through high schools and that where we teach these kids basically how to run their own chapter, as mentioned, the colleges, but also to sort of branch out even more past just doing those, you know, small meetings and things like that, but also fundraising themselves. And we teach them these skills that are highly important, not only for nonprofits, but I think, you know, just life skills in general.
Mhm. Well, yeah, I really love all of these different the facets that you have to this foundation, your partnership with colleges, your mentors and internship, and I think all of it is really uplifting the community. So kudos to you on that. And I know the Kopp Foundation also has a youth ambassador program. Why is it important for you that you young people are helping to lead this work and are involved in the space?
Yeah. What I really think is important for youth to be running these and helping to lead this work is that I think they see problems differently. You know, no bias for me here, but I think they might move a little faster. I think the diabetes space has been sort of a lot of stuff is in the works, especially, you know, with these stem cell treatments with things in like Canada with the eyelids replacements. But I sort of want to focus on it in general. You know, we have all this science backing, and I know Samsung and Apple are working on glucose monitoring to fit into their watches and things like that. But I want to sort of bring a more humane light to it. And I also think, you know, they also build trust with peers. You know, ambassadors, they lead the campus chapters, plan events, collect feedback on what is working, and I think it keeps us honest, really. And I think by following our true model and everyone's like sort of understanding it by youth for youth is I think how we design tests and sort of improve in the real world.
You make a great point. I do think that for sure they bring new perspective to the space and also keep it more humane than perhaps some of the other leading companies and organizations. So I think that it's a great idea. So now kind of zooming out and looking at the big picture, what are you hoping to build for both VitaSensor and the foundation in the next 1 to 2 years and maybe even further out long term in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, for VitaSensor, the goals are, successful, easy feasibility study. We're working through FDA right now, which is a big part of our partnership with the University of Florida and the UFP, PC. Sort of just like get those beginning results and submit that as soon as possible because the FDA is a major part of any designer, any entrepreneurship journey. So, get a refined wearable design what you're currently working on and sort of get that out there patented and make sure it meets the privacy and safety standards. Especially, actually a sort of a roadblock even recently going into recently is their cybersecurity standards, which is something the FDA is really harping on nowadays. Which I think, of course, is very crucial, but something that I honestly didn't really expect, just coming into the new to the space. But just sort of getting over that and getting it FDA validated. Um, for the foundation. The goals are a national youth ambassador network, and repeatable screening and education events and making those packages for donors. Getting as, if someone donates like $100, something like that, getting a glucose checking kit to someone out there in need. I think getting that network established would be amazing in a 1 to 2 year span. And for farther down the road, it's just really refining. We just want to get especially for the foundation is just to get and affect as many people as we can. And hopefully to sort of get into an autonomous state where we hopefully hold a annual fundraising event, which will then allow us to sort of not only just raise awareness, but start supporting research programs that are working in stem cell treatments and beta cell treatments, things like that. That's what we really want to focus on in the future.
Well, yeah, I think I have no doubt that you'll be able to accomplish all of those things. And I wish you the best of luck in that. Yeah, the FDA harping on the cybersecurity is actually very interesting. And it's an interesting challenge for you to have. So I'm sure that you'll be able to get over that, but it's definitely something new to consider. And I love with how each new partner you work with and each new kind of stage that you advance to, you get to learn new things and just improve the design and then also improve your mission and your goals and all of those things. So as someone with so much experience in doing all of these, like a wide variety of things like this, what advice would you give to other teenagers or young adults who want to work on a problem that is large scale, and feels overwhelming?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an amazing question. As I was asking it myself, a big question I asked myself is like, how would I compete with these crazy big names like CVS or big pharma and things like that? And I think as I was thinking as a lens, it's like, I'm just a high schooler. I'm just a teenager. I'm just a little kid compared to these giants. And I think instead of thinking it in that light, you think about it like, what does this give me? What does my youth give me? And I think it's giving me, a little slice of the space. As I'm not big pharma, and my youth I think gives me a unique look into the space. So I think just pick a slice you can ship in like 2 weeks, and then see where you kind of get in that time span and sending a lot of cold emails. I think that's a huge part of it. And just seeing the response you get because it's really inspiring. When you just send an email to a professor or something like that, they respond and they give you tips about things, and it really puts it into light like how much is actually possible for you, and that this challenge that is sort of making an impact is actually attainable for for the youth. And I think sort of as well as finding mentors who like your pace and values, which I honestly don't think it's truly not difficult, but it takes time. I've been through hundreds of interviews and for people, for I guess from the Kopp Foundation for the board, and if you get just 7 out of 100, that's actually a great return rate. 7% is amazing. And those are the people that are truly going to stick with you and do the right thing, and that's who you really got to find. And I would say another major point is sort of write everything down and protect your time, protect your energy, and just keep showing up when you need to. There's no, I don't want to do it today. There's no nothing, none, you can't be doing those things like that because, innovation is never stopping and neither should you. So I think, big problems become solvable when you build small wins into like a system.
Amazing advice. And I definitely think that having that core foundation of believing in yourself and understanding that you still bring a unique value and always just kind of being persistent in what you're doing. I think that's great advice, and I'm sure it'll help everyone listening. So now, can you tell us a little bit about where people can go to follow your work, support what you're doing, and just keep getting updates from what's going on with VitaSensor and the Kopp Foundation?
Yeah, of course. VitaSensor and the Kopp Foundation for Diabetes on LinkedIn and Instagram, as well as we also have websites. And I'm sure we'll be posting webinars. We had our first one a couple of weeks ago, which went amazingly for the Kopp Foundation for Diabetes, so to get some more information there. And you can always reach out through going on those websites and joining the Slack, which are, highly active on.
Great. Well, that sounds good. And I and our audience, of course, has very much enjoyed listening to your work, and we'll definitely be checking out all the things that you've mentioned to keep updated. But thank you so much for sharing with us today. For everyone listening, you can learn more about this program and others by visiting innovationworld.org. And thank you for joining the Innovation World Young Collaborators podcast. Thank you, Max.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much.